Hello everybody, this video is entitled Sorry Mr. Market, but AI is real. If you follow this channel, you may have heard me say that I really don't trust this market. The performance for the fall of 2025 has been awful and nothing like a regular fall. We are greatly underperforming the falls of 24, for example, or your typical autumn season for the stock market. We're underperforming it. This market keeps looking for a reason to sell off stocks. And it's very weird because you have many stocks that have had stellar earnings and they haven't popped. They were popping at the beginning of the year. They're not popping right now. And today, epic morning dump this morning. And we've been recovering throughout the day. But all of the AI names this morning entirely sold off just because Oracle is saying they're going to spend a little more than expected on capex, going to issue another bond, maybe a $15 billion bond or anything like that. And people are, freaking out saying, oh, this is an overinvestment. This is not gonna work. We're investing too much. The typical, people yelling Cisco, people yelling bubble. Not looking at valuations, not looking at PEs, not looking at the fact that actually AI is real. AI is one of the most powerful innovations. AI is as big as electricity. Right, AI is bigger than the airplane. It's bigger than a lot of innovations. I would say it's as big as electricity, as far as the scale. AI is bigger than the telephone, for example. It may be bigger than the internet. That's my take on AI. And the market is seeing AI as kind of this bubble, but it's different. We're not setting up optic fiber in the sea. This is not the 2000s, in my view, in my humble view. Nvidia, we talked about Nvidia. Nvidia is dropping on this. Nvidia had, to me, an outstanding quarter. I listened to the entire conference call. They're sold out. The GPUs are sold out. So Oracle, when I put Oracle in my spreadsheet, it's like a 1.3 or 1.4. It's a little expensive, Oracle, but the whole sector as a whole is in no way expensive. And so I want to go through 3 stocks today that dropped unfairly, in my view, because of this Oracle, nonsense, nothing burger. Yeah, they're investing a little more. Well, guess what? Whatever. They're investing a little more. But the stock is down. So many stocks are down. Nebius, let's talk about Nebius. Nebius entirely sold off in the morning. We were down roughly 8% at one point, between 7 and 8% in this morning. And then we've spent all day climbing back up. And now we're up 1.2%, actually 1.5% as I look at the screen. So all of a sell-off of the morning, we recovered the market. It just seems to want to sell off everything. It just pukes every stock and then it buys it back. This market has been so unstable. So untrustworthy. I don't trust this market. I want to be very careful with this market. So that's why I've been building a cash reserve, because I don't know what's going on. We've had such bullish news yesterday. QE. Like, we have QE months ahead of what we thought we were going to get it. We got a $40 billion QE starting tomorrow, Friday. And the market is barely reacting. The NASDAQ is down. The indices are broadly not moving despite this amazing news. So this market has been just strange. How much more good news can we throw at this market? How much more positivity can we actually throw at this market? And it's not going up. So I don't know what's going on under the hood. Maybe we're still reeling from some of the liquidity issues that were highlighted in November with the shutdown. Maybe we're still reeling for that. It's possible. Anyways, Nebius is as cheap as it's been. It's been sitting under 0.05 on my valuation for weeks now. The market is entirely ignoring it. This company is going to grow anywhere between a 10x and 20x in revenue over the next 12 months. I'm using the analyst number at 1,600%. But, it could be closer to 20x revenue in 12 months. So 2,000%. It could be closer to that. The market is entirely ignoring it. We're not paying up for growth at all on Nebius. Growth at Nebius is very, very, very cheap. In fact, they guided ARR. This is from my prior video on Nebius. I keep repeating myself. They guiding their ARR for 2026 at 7 and 9 billion. Right now, their revenue trailing 12 months is 551 million. Right. So if you go from 551 million to 9 billion, that's an 18x, right? Something like that, nearly a 20x in revenue. And they literally write that. They guide that. That's what they're guiding. That's what they're saying. They're increasing their gigawatt. They're increasing their power. Adjusted EBITDA positive now, 19% EBITDA margin. And the worst thing is that they've sold out their capacity. It's all sold out. And then you have ClickHouse, a mini Snowflake competitor. They own 28% of it. You probably need to remove $6 billion from that enterprise value because that's the value of ClickHouse. And AV Ride, well, that's the wild card. We don't really know how much that's worth, but probably, maybe $1 billion. Anyways, this company to me is sold off for no reason. That's the issue. It's AI stocks, and they're all grouped together, and the market is just selling them off, creating opportunities for those who are a little more trustworthy of this market than I am. Right now, I'm waiting for things to get back to normal in the market right now. That's kind of what I'm doing. Anyways, Nvidia, another example. Like I said, Nvidia, absolutely stellar earnings. Nvidia GPUs are sold out. Jensen said GPUs are sold out. Jensen said in last GTC, we're going to do 500 billion in sales over the next 5 quarters. Now, we did 1 quarter, so we gotta remove that. But if you include this quarter that just passed, plus the 4 quarters, he said $500 billion in sales. My number is showing 69% forward revenue growth. If you look at it, from moving from 185 to 400 billion, right? 500 billion in 5 quarters. So let's assume 100 billion a quarter. If you move from 185 to 400 billion, that's not a 69%. That's closer to 200% growth. But I'm using analyst number here. And using analysts' ultra sandbagged, ultra pessimistic number of 69% next 12-month revenue growth, I get Nvidia at a 0.45. Nvidia is the cheapest Mag 6 stock I can find. Nvidia on a growth-adjusted basis, Nvidia is cheaper than Meta. And people are spooked because they see it's the most expensive company in the world. They see a $4.3 billion valuation. They're like, oh, it's too expensive. They don't want to compute the numbers. They don't realize that the run rate of this company is going to be $400 billion in revenue at an EBITDA margin of probably well into the 60%, right? So think about that. $400 billion is in revenue, $300 billion in cash flow. And stack a multiple of 10 on that would be a $3 trillion company, right? So the market is not even giving a 15 multiple on Nvidia. It makes no sense. Costco is trading at almost a 50 multiple. It makes absolutely no sense to me. By the way, Nvidia is not easily replicated. I know a lot of people like AMD. AMD in my spreadsheet is much more expensive than Nvidia. AMD is more expensive than Nvidia. So why would I want to play with a number 2 player when the number 2 player is more expensive than the number 1 player? And then you have the CUDA architecture, of course, that Nvidia created, and that cannot be easily replicated. That creates a bit of a moat. You have, of course, their capacity that they have with TSMC. They've worked with TSMC since the early days, since they were a very, very small company. That capacity, the value of that relationship cannot be easily copied, right? TSMC is going to keep working with NVIDIA. People are all going to keep working with NVIDIA. They're the best customer out there. I also want to say, I don't understand why the stock is 180. After that Q3, I don't understand why it dropped. We had an amazing Q3 for NVIDIA and the stock dropped. And I also want to say I recommend this Joe Rogan Experience episode with Jensen Huang from last week. You learn a lot about the competitive positioning of NVIDIA. Actually, I never heard Jensen talk for so long about the business. He talks very, very precisely about the business in there. If Joe Rogan is a show that you can watch, I highly recommend it. You learn a lot from Jensen. To me, this stock today down more than 2%. How much is it down? 2.5%. Not quite, but at some point it was totally unwarranted. It's just the market selling off a basket of stocks. And the last stock, which also had a major major delta, down heavily in the morning, and now we're back to where we started, and then some. We're up 6%. It's CleanSpark. I've covered CleanSpark a lot recently, so I'm not going to go tell you any more about CleanSpark. I've covered it a lot. When this stock was trading at $22 about a month and a half ago, I believe that was the normal price. The initial reaction was the correct one. This stock dumped with crypto on October 10, kept dumping with the government shutdown. But this stock, the CEO literally said on the Q3 of the call that they were in talks with 2 hyperscalers, and one of them had just called them, and there's going to be an hyperscaler at some point, probably for a Sandersville site, which is very close to Atlanta. What do you think is going to happen to the CleanSpark stock when they announce the contract with a hyperscaler? I'll give you a hint. It's probably going to pop. It's probably going to pop a lot. And, CleanSpark is showing a price to earnings ratio of 12x. Well, we know earnings are probably not the good metric to use for CleanSpark, because the earnings number does not always represent the cash flow. There's a lot of depreciation that goes into play, etc. I calculated a 2.5x EBITDA on CleanSpark. Roughly 10.5x EBITDA is what it's trading at. CleanSpark is way too cheap, and again, it was sold off heavily this morning. And so, if you feel like you trust this market, there's a lot of deals to be had in the morning when we have these scares. If you feel like you can trust this market, but I'm still being cautious. I'll let you know when I'm not as cautious as I am right now. I'm still being pretty cautious right now and really pacing the buys, really doing not that many buys right now. But anyways, this was not investment advice. This is not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.